Hello YouTube, this is Cody from Bowtied Media, and today we've got another installment of Hot Takes, where I went online and asked for your hot takes about primarily EDM stuff. And there were so many this round on all of the socials that this is a Discord-only one. So this is only messages from Discord that I got about hot takes. If you want to join, there's a link in the description below. So let's hop into it. Bad Computer is the most overrated artist on Monstercat. His best track is Riddle, and he's gotten progressively worse over the entire time he's been on Monstercat, except for his very early tracks. Everything after Paradigm is about a 7 or 8 out of 10, and after Somewhere New, it drops to about a 5. Really? I mean, I feel like of all the artists on Monstercat, Bad Computer is like one of the more mainstay loved artists right now, and I personally disagree with this. I think it's a hot take. I think Bad Computer stuff is incredible. I think his move to a more kind of pop-centric commercial approach to his great sound design has done him quite well, and so I actually really like this. And really, everything after Somewhere New drops to a 5? Like, ugh. Like, what... Yeah, I don't know. And I mean, if you're giving things a 7 or 8, you can't really say they're overrated if you're given half their discography a 7 or 8. So, hot take. Fallen Embers and Ascend were ILLENIUM's best albums. Yeah, hard disagree on this. And I think genuinely that ILLENIUM's albums have gotten progressively worse over time. All 5 have gone on a bit of a downward spiral, and that's actually backed up by online reviews on Rate Your Music and Album of the Year. Literally have his albums all going slowly worse, slowly worse, slowly worse, slowly worse. So I think Ashes is his best, and I think his self-titled ILLENIUM is his worst. And so I would be interested to know when you started following ILLENIUM. If you started following ILLENIUM during like the Fallen Embers Ascend era, then I think that's why. I think you never kind of grew up with Ashes, would be my guess. I feel like the scene is focusing recently a lot more on trying to make the most forward-thinking, crazy, insane, super cool sound design while letting songwriting go to waste. And this is creating a new wave of producers that know how to make some incredible sound design, but leave their structures to be extremely aimless and dull. Yeah, this is an interesting take that I sort of get. Half of it I do get, half of it I don't. I do think there is a more emphasis put on sound design nowadays for sure. I think that is definitely a product of the times where people are looking for something that is out there. And I think mainly the reason for that is because I think it's way easier to recognize unique or interesting sound design than it is to recognize unique and interesting songwriting. I just think that's just sort of how it goes. And I think when it comes to EDM specifically, songwriting isn't really a thing that's thought of a ton. Like, even when you listen to a song with like vocals and stuff, you're not really thinking of what they're writing, or not really the structure of the track. You're thinking about how the drop sounds and the atmosphere of the track. And so I think it's just also just an onus of putting certain things elevating one or the other. And I personally would put more eggs in the basket of thinking about sound design than I would actually songwriting. So I get where you're coming from, though, and I understand the sentiment, but I slightly agree, slightly disagree. So actually a pretty not bad take. I find it really meaningless with how length is easily poked at towards music, especially when it comes to shorter songs. A very recent example of this is the new Bad Computer with Bianca song. I saw a lot of people within the community immediately go towards a length and only critique the track solely for its 2-minute and 40-second runtime, nothing else. Also, I saw no one go after the similar less than 3-minute length with Dead Man Walking when it came out. I believe that if you are only loving or hating a song for how short or long it is, you aren't really listening to music right. I've seen this debacle around length grow in the past couple years. Sure, a lot of songs these days, especially in the mainstream, are getting shorter, but it's more important to focus on what the artist is conveying in that runtime, whether they use it to their advantage or disadvantage. The only artist in the EDM scene I've truly seen make a point about this criticism on length is Wales, who dropped, yes, a 9-minute, 6-track EP on Disciple, then respectfully responded to the backlash on short runtimes by dropping a 9-minute single on Monstercat. Overall, if you can create a fully fleshed out idea in a track with a short runtime, there is no purpose to extending it. And so here's where the crux of this argument I think it's that last sentence you say. If you can create a fully fleshed out idea in a track with a short runtime, there's no purpose in extending it. And I just don't really think you can create a fully fleshed out idea in like 2 minutes. I think you are doing yourself a disservice by creating this needless time boundary for a track. And like Dead Man Walking is a great example because I love the song, and in my initial reaction to it, I did say I love it, I wish it was longer. I wish there was a third movement. I wished it was fleshed out just another way, or given another slightly different drop or something like that. And so I've been a proponent of this too. I've talked about song length a lot in a lot of my tracks, reviews, and all that kind of stuff, and I like longer songs. And yeah, I think the crux of the argument just comes in the fact that I don't think people are actually fully fleshing things out. I think they're doing themselves a disservice by doing it, like, not creating longer songs. And because we've seen longer songs work over time and time again. And Grant, I think, is another great example where, yes, again, I love Dead Man Walking and even Bad Computer. I love both their stuff now, but their stuff older, they did 5-minute songs. They did 4-minute, 5-minute songs where there was stuff really, really fleshed out, and they had really expansive atmospheres and tones and structures that did themselves a service. And so now when we come to these sort of shorter tracks, we recognize that, we don't have what could have maybe been. And so I think it's all a product of the times of just having shorter attention spans and needing that kind of quick hit of stuff. But personally, I think maybe, and tell me if I'm wrong here, I think I do a good job of actually talking about song length in a healthy way and not just being like, it's bad because it's short. I don't think I've really ever said that. I hope I'm not that harsh to judge things like that. But you let me know in the comments if my conversation around length is positive or not. Marshmello needs to do something different for once and actually branch out from this boring trap thing he's been doing for ages. His stuff is becoming so monotonous and lazy, it's crazy. I agree. I don't think this is a hot take as much, but I do want to put it in here for 2 reasons. One, Marshmello just dropped a kind of like future-based weird cover of Crave You with Dove Cameron that came out, and that was interesting, and I think it actually worked well for him. And also, the man tweeted he was making a rhythm album before the next Joytime record. So I'm fascinated to see what a rhythm Marshmello album is going to sound like, but apparently that's coming, and potentially by the start of 2024. So see how that goes. Porter Robinson is pretty overrated. I'll admit that I'm not super into or experienced with his stuff. No, stop. We're done. We're done there. You can't say he's overrated and then immediately say I actually don't really listen to his stuff that much. I think Porter Robinson is a cultural icon in the EDM world. I think he's a trailblazer, and my guess is that you haven't been around EDM for a ton of time to have been around for Worlds having been released back in, I think, 2014. So my guess is you're a newer EDM fan that was told to go back and listen to the Porter Robinson stuff, and you're like, meh. But yeah, I think you're just wrong. Soulero was the best house artist until Nigel Good came on to 024. We're talking about Monstercat here, obviously. But the only artist who contends him is Puppet with Scribble is the only song I can think of that beats a Soulero song. For Scribble, there's Seconds Away. For Answers, there's Aura. And for The Fire, there's Invisible. His consistency was unmatched at the time. I will agree that I think Soulero was a great artist, and I loved a lot of his stuff too, but I don't think in any world is those Puppet tracks that comparable to the Soulero ones. I think the Puppet ones have a lot more energy to them. I think they're a lot more dynamic than the Soulero tracks are, and I like Soulero. I think their stuff's great, but I think it's, in the terms of overall scheme of things, I think it's fairly generic house, where Puppet did something, I think, truly different with its kind of rock house style that I hadn't heard before that time. The change to Monstercat Instinct being more centered around radio-friendly tracks has been a really good decision on Monstercat's part. It's helping to bring in a new audience into the Monstercat family without having to rely on the more niche side of EDM Monstercat has been for years. The loss of an Instinct/Silk release per week still sucks alongside this, but it's led to some of the best uncaged tracks in recent memory. I would have to agree for the most part. I think here, personally, me being a huge Instinct fan, I haven't loved the kind of more radio-centered stuff that Instinct has put out, but again, that's just my personal opinion. But I do think Uncaged has been phenomenal and has been the best it has in a bunch of years. And so I think I'd at some point like to revisit what that the Monstercat schedule change around is, but I don't think it's got quite enough time yet. I think it needs a little bit more time before I really have a fleshed out opinion and or have some data to back stuff up. But yeah, sure. Xilent's We Are Dust is a contention for the most overrated album of all time. It's just regular glitchy dubstep that people obsess over for some reason. Like, even though all of them are pretty much the same and they're like all decent, I don't really care about the world building or story because all of the tracks don't really deliver on that. Sure. Sure. I mean, it's a hot take. I will say when We Are Dust originally came out, I wasn't super. That was the time where I was following Monstercat the least of any other time in my life. But I mean, I wasn't over the moon about it. But I went back and revisited it. I thought it was absolutely phenomenal. So maybe just need some more time with it. I mean, also if you don't like the album, I guess you don't like the album. But to say it's the most overrated album of all time, nah, dog.